Hello, good evening. This is Atsushi, and this is the Sashiko Live Streaming in English. This is the live streaming where I talk about Sashiko while doing Sashiko stitching, unedited. I'm not gonna edit anything, so you can probably watch and learn. The questions are welcome. The topic to the request to the topic to talk about is welcome, but I'm not gonna teach anything here. It's not the workshop, so I will I will enjoy stitching, and I want you to bring something to stitch with, or even knit or anything handcrafting, or you can use, of course, the machine stitching as well. Anyway, I want this live streaming as the place to be, which is we call ibasho, and I hope we can spend some time together over the internet. And I'm sorry for the last Thursday, and I took a day off for the last Thursday, and I hope you can enjoy it here today. Okay? 日本語が出てこない。こんばんは。おはようございます。こんばんは。サシコライブをやっていこうと思います。英語での配信です。日本語バージョンは今日の夜、日本時間の夜9時半頃を目安に開始しようと思っています。どうぞよろしくお願いします。それでは今日の英語の配信を始めようと思います。Kathy, hi Atsushi, first time catching you live, doing some importantly. This evening sounds good. I hope you enjoy that time together. It doesn't have to be Sashiko. I mean, we talk about Sashiko, but it doesn't really have to be Sashiko. It's good to spend some time together just doing something. All right, I will change the camera. And this one is off. Hi, I'm stitching Asanoha patterns on dishcloth while listening to your voice. Welcome, Lily-san. I'm back to Asanoha stitching as well. I have not completed the free stitching, but I feel like I'm doing the Asanoha pattern today, so today I'm gonna do the Asanoha pattern. Sakura, どうした? Sakura, どうした? It has been 2 weeks, right? Like I didn't do it last week, so time flies so fast. To be honest, I didn't do much Sashiko stitching this week. I have been sort of catching up with everything. I took almost a week off last week, so it has been a very challenging days. I did not really get sick or anything, but I was not stable enough to talk last week. Just a second, okay. It might take some time to get used to this. Sakura. Yeah, but the more I spend time in English around Sashiko, the more I realize that it's Sashiko and Boro as well. The word themselves got their own meaning. We call it kotoba no hitoriaruki, but it's more like those words started working by itself as if they have own will. So they have their original meaning, but sounds like it's having its own meaning, which can be the result of we or somebody romanticizing what Sashiko is. But it is really interesting to see how Boro and Sashiko became something completely different. There's nothing wrong with the stressed jeans. Like if you damage the fabric on purpose with using the flat file or sandpapers or even sometimes rocks. There's nothing wrong with that. It's fashion, and I understand that, fashionable way. But once they do that, it's not borrow. It's opposite of borrow, and it's kind of disrespectful to call it borrow, no matter how it looks like it, how similar it looks like. It's very opposite. And those borrow is kind of creepy because fabric cries. I can hear the scream from the fabric for that. So I don't really define what borrow is, and I cannot do that. I do not want to provide one definition for the borrow, but one of the things I can define what is not borrow is that kind of things, no matter how similar that item looks like, if they intentionally damage the fabric. Hello, Candida. Yes, I am feeling better. Thank you. It was not like sick or something. I don't want to say emotionally unstable, but something bothered me a lot, and I did not want to make a, how can I say, offensive comment for that, I guess. I did the Japanese live streaming because I know that I can control Japanese well. English, I don't really, I'm not confident that I can control what I say. So I decided to have a safer route. Like occasionally when I hear something or when I see something, out of nowhere it started coming, like some stress or some frustration, something negative comes up, and it is difficult to sort of manage that. I don't know what it is, and this is my journey to, I did not even, it was a pain until 2019. That's the time that's the first time I had heard the word cultural appropriation. That's the first time I learned that word concept. I'm still learning about it, but from time to time I started feeling something kind of nasty inside of myself. But my goal is to include everybody, including the Japanese who cannot speak up, who choose not to speak up. I don't want to leave them behind. So instead of defining what it is, I like to include everybody. And that's what I do. しのぶさん、おはようございます。おはようございますですね。Hello。ありがとうございます。Well, I'm human after all. Whew. So one of the reasons that I did not feel good about, one of the reasons I was under the weather was that I kind of remembered the conversation about I taught Sashiko myself. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm actually encouraging you to do it by sharing this live streaming. I hope you can take my online class or in-person workshop. I hope that I'm pretty sure that I can offer something new, something eye-opening. But at the same time, I do not want to filter who can learn based on what they have or what they don't have. So I want everybody to, I want to include everybody. So I shared those videos so that everybody can learn. So I am kind of, encouraging you to teach yourself. But I want you to remember or keep that in your mind that you are referring to the videos I'm stitching with. So for example, if somebody asks you where you learn Sashiko, you can say that you taught it yourself, but I want you to say that you taught it yourself by watching this. Then the stories continues because they might be interested in me, or they might read some of the stories from me. But when somebody said that I taught it myself, period, that's the end of the story. That we cannot really dig into that. Nobody can. I don't think anybody can make everything from scratch. We, use something, we get inspiration from something, we just don't remember that, or we don't really pay attention to that. We do not acknowledge that because it's everywhere right now. But that's the end of the story. And since we're talking about the cultural sort of tradition, especially Sashiko is, has a very long years of history. When it comes to that, and if you're foreigners, if you're not Japanese, it is quite extremely important to acknowledge that stories behind it. So, well, this goes to Japanese too. It doesn't, being Japanese is not gonna, waive or excuse this responsibility. Of course, Japanese has to care about those stories, but because the tradition is the accumulation of those stories, I don't want you to just say that I taught it myself, as if I don't want them actually. No, I don't think you say that. I don't want anybody to say that they taught Sashiko themselves, as if they created it by themselves. I think that's what culture is like. That's the cultural sustainability that I often talk about. The sustainability is not only about the environment, but also the cultural practice. Hello, Helen. Welcome back. I am working with Sashiko thread, but I have no definition of what I'm stitching. That's what Sashiko is. That's why I'm working with Sashiko thread, but are you stitching or are you just... Some people use... some people actually knit. I think they knit with... knitting. They knit with this thread and they can make a good stuff. Hello, which thread are you using currently? I use only one thread, one type of thread, different colors, but I use the only one type of thread, and which is on my website. And I think there's a link. I wrote the link here. I think, just a second. Supplies in this video. Yep, if you go to the description area, there is a link to this thread I'm using. If you are asking for the color, it's the original white. And there are kind of three kinds of original white. Everything is very good, but it's a little tiny different. This one is T1. T is Tom 1. Recently, I recommended my mom Sashiko, and she enjoys Sashiko every day. See, that's what matters. That's exactly what I want. I don't know if Lily-san's mother can join the live streaming in English at night, but that's what I want, kind of expanding the group. So, it might sound crazy, but please teach others. Are you working on the right or wrong side of the fabric? We don't have right or wrong side. This is not, we don't have right or wrong side. That's already a misunderstanding of Sashiko. See, like, it is so interesting that many people teach there's a right side and wrong side. Of course there are, but that's something I want you or anybody who teaches to decide, not by someone that's saying this is the right side or wrong side. I have been enjoying learning Sashiko from you, Atsushi. Not just the technique, but the feeling behind the work and history, and this makes a unique experience of the craft. Thank you. Well, that's the whole matter. I mean, technique itself is very easy. I shouldn't say very easy, but with checking your posture, Candida, I don't think I have much left to teach to you from technical perspective. And I believe you feel the same way too. There's not that much to learn to be like me. But there are so many stories that I would like to share so that you will understand what Sashiko can be. And I think that's the reason, that's the significance, that's the value of me speaking up. Somebody who was born in Japan, who grew up in Japan, somewhat learned how to speak English. So the stitching itself is very easy. I mean, it's not rocket science. It doesn't require any studying. What we need is just a piece of understanding of the form and probably 10 hours of practice. Of course, in order to get better, only practice makes it better. But in order to get it right, it's really not that difficult. Well, some people may suffer, so I shouldn't say it's easy. It was easy for me, and I think people find it easy from my experience teaching. So so many running stitch today. I didn't really stitch this week, so gotta get used to the rhythm again. Oh, I forgot about it. I forgot to mention that as the first. This is the kind of advertisement, so I should have talked about it in the beginning. I will be in San Francisco this summer. Yay! I think the first time in West Coast. It's actually not a San Francisco, it's a Berkeley, right? Berkeley. I'm flying to San Francisco SFO. I think the airport is SFO. So I kind of say San Francisco, but I'll be teaching the Sashiko workshop, in-person Sashiko workshop in Berkeley from the organized by Slow Fiber Studio and World Shibori Network, the Wada Sensei's place, that famous Wada Sensei's place. It has been an honor, and it is going to be a big honor for me to teach there. But I believe it's the first time to teach in the West Coast. Was there any No. The farthest that I have been is the Phoenix. So what do we do? San Francisco is the first city I landed to the US before I started studying in the US. That was one big experience. The Japanese studied English. Japanese studies English in the middle school and high school, so I could read some of those. At least I could, took a TOEFL, which is the English exam to get into the university. Not that great to get into the good universities, but good enough to go to the good enough to go to the party school back then. But the pronunciation was very different. The pronunciation, we do not really learn the pronunciation in Japan, so I could not speak English like this back then. It was in 2002, the year after the 9/11. So it was so shocking that I could not even order milk in the cafe. That was my shocking time. I kept pronouncing milk, and the waiter couldn't understand what I was saying. So yes, it has been a long time. I don't know why I didn't use this scissors. It is very flattering that many people ask me to teach. It's a big honor. It's a very big honor to be able to teach. If there's nobody who wants to learn, I cannot even teach. So it is my very pleasure to be able to teach. I hope and I think I will be able to go to the Atlanta next year for the QuiltCon. Probably. I applied for the faculty. I hope. Let's see. In person is I tried my best to offer the exact same experience in the online class. So it's not that in person is not that significant in comparison to the online class. The COVID destroyed everything, and we are in the new normal. But one thing that the COVID benefited me is the online class. I was not planning to offer that online much, but I had to develop that to survive through. I wouldn't be able to make my ends meet if I didn't offer the online class. So yeah, that's one good thing about it, and I will do everything for the people who support me through the online class. Sometimes one thing good about in person is that they can, or you can touch the actual fabric or what I make or what my mother make. So that's the one thing that I cannot offer over the online, which in the future when I can travel, please come to my workshop if you take online class, and then I would love to meet them. For that matter, anyone can come. And for this San Francisco time, this Berkeley time, I think there's going to be a day for the trunk sale or some exhibition, so anybody can come and look at it. That's just one thing that I really miss. Feeling, touching, smell, those things are something I cannot deliver over this Zoom. I found your channel while researching way to repair my children's genes. I love the whole concept. I've started learning Sashiko now. Thank you for your videos. My pleasure. Yeah, it's a good way. Just patch it. For the kids, I would just patch it. Because they grow away, they grow out. They grow out? Growing out. Grow out. For the adult, it's a good idea. I have not purchased any denims for what? 5 years. Wow. I had probably 10 denims or 7 pairs of denims, I guess. There's only 2 that I can fit right now. Not because of the damages, because I got little wider after my, I did not go through the birth, but after I became a father, for some reason I got so much weight. I didn't go through the birth. Oh yeah, the live class. Live class would be nice. Before this COVID, I had a plan to go to the Italy. I had a plan to go to the kind of Europe area. So, it became a little difficult right now, but one day. Yep, outgrow. My daughter outgrows the clothes very fast, so I stopped kind of mending it. I tried to mend it once or twice, but since we don't get that much good quality clothes for our kids, I mean, it's pretty, I don't want to say shitty, but mass-produced cheap clothes, because we know that she's gonna jump into the mud, she's gonna slide, and it's gonna be it's a child, pretty active child. So, and she kind of doesn't like that. That's me. So she does not like that fact that I am mending it. But the idea is great, and I hope that your child is enjoying it. It's good that you can teach the kids how important it is to appreciate what we have. That might be another thing to talk about. As much as I do, have a social experiment, like I'm not gonna purchase any clothes. I will keep mending. I will keep making for myself, besides the underwear. But it does not mean that I force it to my family or for anybody else. I don't like that idea of forcing it. It is good. It is good that if we can, stop buying those mass-produced clothes. At the same time, there are a culture behind that mass production, so we have to sort of balance it first before saying one extreme. So going one extreme from like fast fashion to extreme fast fashion to the extreme slow fashion is very Western. It's a dualism, slow or fast, fast or slow, good or bad. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we are talking about Sashiko, if in the process of learning Sashiko, I want to share what is in between those or outside of those dualism. I think that's the beauty of learning Sashiko instead of just the mending or something else. Hello, hello. We also pass down clothing from one to another. Yeah, that's a very good way to appreciate that. I have about 100 years old with using almost 200 years old vintage fabric jacket that I received from my mother. So it's generations to generation. It can happen. It doesn't have to be some fancy vintage fabric. It can be any fabric to pass down. It's correct me if I'm wrong, but I sometimes find very dangerous how Western culture justified justice. And we, I'm like that as well, I guess, because I'm adjusting myself to live in this culture. But when we try to look at one phenomena, one thing, we try to decide if it is good or bad, or good or bad for something specific. So now, because of the sustainability concern SDGs, we consider waste, like, wasting fabric is not a good thing, right? And I agree. I 100% agree. So that's another reason that Sashiko is pretty popular, and that's great. What is that? But at the same time, that's how we romanticize the word Sashiko without knowing what it was. And by using the word without even caring what it could mean to the original people, like in this case for Japanese people, and then that's going to be a little bit of problem because that could repaint the culture. Not knowing is fine. Like if you don't know about Sashiko and if you use the word Sashiko for any mending, that's perfectly fine because you will be able to know it later on. You can acknowledge it. But the problem is that there are people who are intentionally ignoring it because that's not going to be their profit. So this is one of the biggest misunderstanding, and I hope Marie, and I hope you get. I hope this is gonna kind of ring your bell, but Sashiko is not the word for mending. I know many videos can be found by searching with Sashiko, but Sashiko is not word for the mending. Mending is a very important part of Sashiko. However, Sashiko itself is not the word for the mending. So Sashiko mending sounds a little bit off. Back then, people stitched Sashiko because they did not want to do mending. So it's opposite. I often use this example, but for me, today's Sashiko trend, like Sashiko as the visible mending trend, it's a trend, and there's nothing wrong with the Sashiko being visible mending because that's part of it, a part of it. But I feel as if that one damaged their health because they want to take the Advil or Tylenol. I have a headache, so I have a painkiller. I take it. It's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with taking the painkiller. But there might be something we can do before or in order to prevent to take the headache. In order to take, there might be something we can do to avoid having the headache, such as eating healthy or sleeping good, those things. For some reason, Western culture focus on the mending itself and forget about sleeping well. So they're kind of taking the medication for the purpose of taking the medication And that's a little bit, that's pretty strange. But at the same time, there are not that many Japanese people who speak up about it. And they don't know it too. Being Japanese doesn't justify them. So if they just started doing Sashiko in last few years, that they will follow the current trend. They have a many more they have a bigger chance to experience what Sashiko is because they can read, they can understand Japanese, but it does not mean that they can. So it's really difficult. But we are the last generation. We may be able to pass it down to the next world. So our grandparents' generation did not have to do Sashiko. No, I don't think so. Well, some, of course, not everybody, but but the majority of the Japanese people in my grandmother's generation, grandparents' generation, they probably did a lot of stitching by hand, but they did not. The Sashiko itself was not the part of the life. It's around World War II, so they had enough fabric. They were pretty modernized. But those great parents' great parents could be the generation of doing stitching for their survival. So our grandparents' generations are the last generations of actually looking at their great parents' stitching, and that 50 generations ago is the original form of Sashiko, in my understanding. That's why it is very important for us to speak up. Like my daughter's generation cannot reach to that information because that's going to be gone. Because I don't know, I have not seen those Japanese people who had to stitch for survival because they were always fabric. My family had to stitch, but that was for the business purpose, so it's not the same. And that's how culture can be interesting and difficult. So I hope that you can try to stitch first before mending so that fabric can be stronger and one can wear that forever. Not forever, but in longer time. Well, forever is a good, sorry. Come on. So yeah, so whatever is a little bit of too whatever is a dangerous word in describing somebody's culture. So don't say whatever thread, whatever fabric, just as long as it's mending, we can call it Sashiko, whatever is fine. Don't say that. There are reasons why we use this needle, this thimble, this thread, this fabric. Why do we call it visible mending or invisible mending? There are always a reason behind it. That's the stories. That's why it's tradition. If they say like, just because, it's a lack of stories, and that's not a tradition. Just because is because, they just didn't know it, didn't learn enough. Like, why do you use this Sashiko thread? Just because. What kind of thread can I use? As long as it's the same thickness, it's fine. No. No. And there's a reason for this needle. It is kind of easy to understand when we know what was the whole purpose of doing Sashiko, you wouldn't use a Sashiko needle with big eye because that's gonna ruin the whole purpose. So yeah, just don't let others, especially those who do not know exactly what it is, to define your answer. If you want to follow that, like, easy instant gratification kind of things, that's fine, but you will probably get tired or get bored at some point. But it's more than what you might know. But it does not mean that you cannot know. You can always learn. And I think almost every, not every, the stories are almost unlimited. I don't think I have shared 10% of stories yet, but all the technique and important stories, like significant stories for, significant stories to explain why, are almost there. Like almost all those videos are there, so if you keep watching the YouTube, you will probably find it. Oh, sorry, Candida, I missed your comment. All the memories of that item fabric is kept. Yep. Since many people here are sort of textile manic, or we love textile probably, or thread or yarn, fabric. We love those things. Fabric talks. This talks. I mean, does not have a mouth or verbal acoustic sound, but they talk. They really do. So don't ignore their voice. It makes a lot of difference if you can hear that. How is Sashiko viewed in Japan today? Craft. Not many Japanese people know about Sashiko much. It is more popular than before, but it has become a craft. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing with that. There's nothing wrong with considering Sashiko as the craft, but so those hanafukin, the sampler, those dishcloth as the white, this big, sort of like 34 centimeters square, so how many inches, I don't know, 34 centimeters square, it became art, the canvas to draw some art or stitch some art. So many people enjoy Sashiko as the craft, and that's one part of Sashiko. That's a big picture. Sashiko is a big picture, and that's one part of Sashiko. There's nothing wrong with that, and I sometimes do it, but I don't enjoy it that much, so I don't teach. But what I do is probably, I don't think it's a mainstream. Not many people do that. That's why I have many Japanese students as well. I was surprised actually when I started this kind of live streaming. I kind of thought that many Japanese people knew how to do Sashiko. In reality, they asked me to teach. So for that, I think it's almost died out. It's not the culture well preserved. It's the culture that we decided not to continue as the mainstream. It changed. Culture changes, and it's supposed to change. So it has been different. But that's how Sashiko become. And in order to make Sashiko as a business, there are a few ways to do it. In order to make Sashiko as a business, there are few vehicles to make it happen. And you may wonder, why do we have to make Sashiko as a business? But in order to keep the culture alive, we have to kind of think about those business, or at least the circulation, the ecosystem. We cannot eat air, so we have to find the system to make those creators or artisans to make their ends meet. So the business or those ecosystem is very important to consider, and that's the business, right? Let's say that's the business. There are few ways to make business out of Sashiko. One is to make lots of Sashiko and sell it as the sort of the craft / art / something, the jacket or something like that. And that's where I am from. That's the family that I'm from. Unfortunately, that's not gonna probably a good business because there are not that many good artisans left. It takes some years to train the artisans, so it's not really idealistic or even realistic to start that from scratch. And the other two is to sell the kit, like the packages. And the third one is to teach, right? So there are three ways. One is to be like a manufacturer, craftsman, artisans, and make these things and sell it. The second thing is to make a kit, or sell the supplies and kit. And the third one is to teach. I do three of those. I personally do three of those. But this one, sometimes we manufacture. Sometimes when we focus on the business, people focus on the second one, the selling the supplies and kit. When we sell the kit, we have to make rules. We have to define what it is. We have to provide the direction to follow. Otherwise, it's not gonna be good. I sell those kits, but I explain why I don't have those manuals inside of the package. I don't want anybody to define your experience. So that's how Sashiko became craft-like by those big manufacturers, big suppliers defining one answer as the whole answers. And I think most of the books published define the answers because publishers probably have to make the author define what the answer is, because if the book said that you can do whatever you want, that's not gonna sell well, especially if it's sold as the how-to book. If it's like a philosophy book, probably not, but nobody reads philosophy book recently, so if they don't read it, that's not gonna be a good sales. Teaching is also one thing, but teaching can be either time-consuming. You have to train a lot. One has to train themselves a lot, or one has to be very brave to start teaching something they really do not know. So either way. Sherry, welcome back. There is a lady from Ontario, Canada that is on YouTube. Her site is Just Get It Done Quilt. She had a lady on that did Korean embroidery. I gave her your YouTube page. I thought you might be a good interview. Sure, that'd be great. I hope I'm not gonna disappoint you. Or there was a follower, I think he was pretty passionate about Sashiko, and he or she, I don't remember, he or she introduced one lady on the YouTube doing the interviews. You know, the person introduced me to do it, interview, and the person interviewer contacted me if I want to be the part of the interview. And I asked her to read some of my posts to understand the base frame of Sashiko. Otherwise, I don't want to talk about what Sashiko is in front of somebody from the basic. Like, they can watch this live streaming. I have tons of videos explaining that. And it's kind of course, it is very important to talk about everything from scratch. But I want an interviewer to at least know something about it. And I asked her to do it, and she said no. So, like, then it's not gonna happen. Nope, I'm not gonna do it. That's why I don't think some people think that I'm being difficult for that. I should focus on the publicity that, talking about the same thing over and over again is good for the publicity. Yes, but it depends on what is their intention. If they want to use me to their channel, no thank you. By chance was the lady Youngmin Lee. I think that's the lady we talked about last time, right? I did not Google after that. The reason I ask those things is that if they do not really try to learn what Sashiko is before the interview or before the article for that matter, it's going to be very difficult because what they can find online is probably different from what I would say in the interview. So then the interviewer start trying to twist what I'm saying because that's not gonna be the original script. And I ask pretty much the same thing to everybody, to read or to understand what Sashiko is first. For me, not for anybody. To me, what Sashiko is to me first. Then we can talk about it. But otherwise, it's gonna be like a nightmare. Like, if somebody comes to me with understanding Sashiko is the visible mending, that interview is gonna be pretty bad because Sashiko is not the visible mending for me. It's opposite. So that's gonna be a very sad interview. So it's not only for me being difficult, it's a very good way to save time for both of us. But that's not probably a smart choice in this world, but I try to keep my way because I do not think any publicity is a good publicity. It might sound crazy, but I'm kind of happy with what I do right now. If I carry a lot of responsibility, I have to, at some point, I may have to change something I have to say, and I don't like that. I want to be like this. I can say whatever I want, wherever. I said whatever I want on the NPR. I got scared a little bit because it's NPR, and the interviewer was misunderstanding what Sashiko was first, initially. And I bravely asked her to read some of the things, and she read, and then that became an interview. But that's a little bit scary things to say whatever I wanted on that kind of interview. But it's okay, I guess. That's what I value now. I probably should stop doing this live streaming or even teaching if I have to modify what I say based on who I have to benefit to. That's the Sashiko itself is not gonna. Sashiko is not that strong to change that kind of tendency. All right, 1 hour has passed almost. Time passed so quick. I have the same challenge with my business. People have an idea of what Finsui is because it is so popular, but it's not the traditional Finsui. And good luck with that, Helen. I mean, I feel you. I hope you will do great, and I'm sure you will great. I think one thing is the consistency. That's something we can do. As long as it's consistent, as long as it does not contradict within what we say. Like if I say something today like Sashiko is not the visible main thing, then if I say Sashiko is the visible main thing in different platform, that's already double standard. And I'm changing what I say based on the people who I talk to. If I start doing that, it's not gonna have a credit. The credibility is gone. But as long as we say something consistently, probably we can penetrate through the sort of the common understanding, which can be wrong. 30 years ago, it was impossible. 30 years ago, the media was the only things to sort of pick a trend. Still it is. Still it is. The trend has to be made by somebody. The Sashiko's trend is probably controlled by somebody. But at the same time, because of social media, we can be one small, tiny media. Like this one is sort of the media for that matter. And I think honesty is the only one way that the honesty is the strategies I have. Only one strategies. Not because I try to be honest as possible to make money or something. It's not like that. Well, that's important to consider the business. But the reason I am honest is that I'm not smart. I'm not smart enough to memorize everything I say, especially in public like this. So if I make a lie here today, right now, like let's say I'm Sashiko, or what do I say? Let's say something that. Let's say Sashiko is the art today. Like I want you to consider me the artist, so I say Sashiko is the art, and I'm the best artist, Sashiko artist in the world. If I say that today without thinking like that, I made a lie here. I lied here right now. I have to remember how I lied. I cannot do that. I'm not that young anymore. So if I lie, I have to memorize the time and how I lied. And if I lie, probably I have to lie another time not to make contradiction. Then I have to memorize those 2, 3, 4. No, I don't think I can do that. So as the result, if I don't lie, I don't have to worry about those things. And if I say something completely different, that means that I am being different. So I have to be careful if I am being different because of something else, or because of I am different. If I if I become different under the being honesty condition, then I can think back, I can reflect myself if I am intentionally changing myself or subconsciously changing myself. If I am subconsciously changing myself, that can be a change or even evolution. If I am changing what I say intentionally for somebody else, then that's something I have to kind of take it back. Ay, ay. But that's the beauty of this. The medias are very well organized. They remember all of the, I don't want to say lie, but all of the themes they have. You know the difference between CNN and Fox. They have their own standpoint, and they don't change that. Those small media like this YouTube channel, we have to be clear what we are talking about. And only one way to do it is probably just being honest. Otherwise, it's gonna be a nightmare. Okay, another. Another 30. Oh, I don't think I can do another 30 minutes. I'm getting tired. I mean, it's 10 o'clock right now here, so I will do probably 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes, either one more thread or this thread. If you're watching this as the archive, please leave the comments if you have any questions. I will try to bring that question to the next live streaming, which is next Thursday, hopefully. And if you have any questions right now, I'm not going to talk about techniques much, but if you have any questions about the cultural perspective of what Sashiko is and stuff like that, please leave the comments. I may be able to answer those. Or I can probably navigate your question to some answers somewhere. And stitching is a time eater. We don't really feel the time, which is good, which is very good that we can enjoy the time like this. But one more thread, one more line, one more row, one more, it's endless. So I have to kind of make a time limit to start and stop. Yep, probably this I will finish after this much thread, so. Whew. So today's talk, rough summary is that the tradition is the accumulation of the stories. So just because or whatever, or even like I taught it myself without sort of acknowledging what they learned from. I mean, it is perfectly fine to teach well to themselves, but they teach themselves with some materials. Those things is gonna sort of end the tradition. It's gonna block to go. It's gonna rip the ticket off to look back, and that's very unfortunate. At the same time, those people who do not really learn or did not do the research, they cannot get that. That's why they say whatever, or I taught myself. I want them to keep learning. So do you too. But there's no need to learn, or there's no need to even, I want to acknowledge it, but there's no need to keep learning if that's the only for yourself. You can, you don't have to learn Japanese. You don't have to master Japanese to enjoy Sashiko. You can learn anything. I mean, you can enjoy Sashiko as you wish. But if you're trying to spread that, what Sashiko is to others, please try to learn the stories behind it. Because that's gonna be the part of the culture game. And I keep saying, I decided to say this one every time I do the live streaming, but seems like I gotta, well, since I do a lot of this social media, I gotta haters. I think we all get haters at some point. So he or she is very passionate to watch this live streaming often to give us the bad sign. It's very interesting that every time I do it, there is one bad, and it's very I don't, it does not make me sad. It makes me, wow, she or he likes me a lot, because that's pretty intense. But anyway, I think the ratio of the good button is gonna be, it's gonna define the health of this channel. So if you could help me out by tapping the good button, that'll be a good help for me to keep doing it. It's the Mother Teresa, I guess, talked about it. The opposite of love is not hate. It's the ignorance, right? So the opposite of love is not a hate, it's ignorance. If somebody hate me that much, that person have to love me as well, because it's a lot of time and effort to keep disliking one person like that. And this is a one big mistake if you see that. So I stitch too much. As the result, I will lose the stitches here this much. 3, 2, 1. Only a few stitches missing. So it's not as sad as I thought, but it's one sad outcome. Stitching, I stitched, but there's no stitches left. Okay. Thank you so much for tapping the good button, like button. All the, come on, the word. All of the interface here is in Japanese, so I just really don't know what it says in English. Just a second. Okay, so this one's gonna be gone. Okay. Alright, thank you so much for watching the Sashiko live streaming. I will stop it a little bit earlier than usual, but I hope you had a good 1 hour to enjoy stitching, knitting, anything with hands. This is the place for anybody to be. I'm not gonna block anybody, or I'm not gonna, chase anybody for that. I just want this to be a place to be, and sometimes to share the same time over the internet while doing something similar. We call it ibasho for that. Alright, I hope I can come back next Thursday. I will try my best. Probably I can. Another 1 hour of stitching together on Thursday. Alright, thank you so much and have a good night. Bye bye.